My dad wants me to give up my house for my pregnant stepsister after her boyfriend left, but there's a dark secret he doesn't know about. Alright y'all, let me tell you about this messed up situation I'm in. My deadbeat dad Phil, 62, and evil stepmom Karen have been trying to kick me out of my own damn house to give it to my spoiled pregnant stepsister, all because her loser boyfriend dumped her broke ass. See, my dad recently found out how much I'll be making at my new job and was shook. Suddenly this cheap, selfish, never-around father of mine wants to play the we're family card with me. The only reason he's being all mushy about our blood ties now is because he knows I'll be raking in the big bucks. But get this, the pride and joy he wants to give my hard-earned home to is Ashley, 29, my stepsister and a straight-up escort. Yep, you read that right. Apparently, working as a prostitute and selling nudes online to her fans is something to be proud of in Daddy Dearest's eyes. I'm no Puritan, but that shit is disgusting and dangerous as hell. Don't even get me started on how many guys Ash has been with. She's definitely racked up some numbers doing her little escorting gig. I know, because one time my buddy told me she hit him up after they went out for drinks, sent him a link to her page with all her nasty photos and videos. He showed me the pics too, said he didn't realize she was my stepsister at the time. I don't know if I believe that part, but whatever. Another time I caught Ash sneaking back into the house through a window in the middle of the day. Saw her get out of some old guy's car too. He even gave her flowers before they drove off together. I never told my dad about that, just couldn't bring myself to do it. I try to keep my own dating life pretty tame in comparison. Yeah, I'll flirt with girls when I can, maybe hit it off and things get physical sometimes, but I'm not out there scrambling to rack up bodies like it's a game or something. Prefer to wait for the right woman, you know? Don't get me started on these meatheads who walk around showing off their gross muscles all the time either. Anyway, so now despite me being the one who's actually got his life together with a good career, dear old dad wants to throw me out on the street to take care of little Ashley and her mistakes instead. Says we have to put family first, but his version of family seems to just be enabling her reckless lifestyle. I mean, she's constantly bumming money off him because her escort gig mustn't be doing too hot. I'm at my wits' end here, people. Needed to vent and get this all out there since I got nobody else to talk to about this craziness. Let me know your thoughts, even if you think I'm out of line. No holding back, lay it on me. So I haven't been around the new fam for too long since dear old dad Phil was eager to ship me off at the first opportunity. But I've seen enough of Ashley to say she's just like her mom, Marissa, 58. Marissa was a real piece of work. Thought she was some kind of hotshot in her prime. Used to be a flight attendant and was hot enough to snag man wars like my dad back in the day. Now she's just a washed-up, Botchkarini type, if you know what I mean. With her talons painted longer than her damn lips, she runs the daycare down the street. Crazy to think parents leave their kids with someone with Edward Scissorhands hands like that. One wrong move and she could take a kid's eye out. But that's just how fake and plastic Marissa is, inside and out. More fake than a Kardashian skin. She's got an opinion on everything and loves stirring up drama in people's lives. Plus her voice is like nails on a chalkboard. I think she's a big reason why Dad didn't hesitate to pack me off to boarding school when I was 8. Marissa didn't want to deal with another woman's kid. Simple as that. Now let me tell you about Phil himself. He's really the core issue here. Dude legit thinks every shitty thing he does is justified just because he's lived life and knows better. Claims he regrets me being born since I didn't turn out just like his sorry ass. Thanks God for peeping that one big time. My real mom was a strong woman who had priorities and actually took care of Phil back before they had their falling out. She always told me he wasn't a bad guy per se, just different. And that no matter what he'd always be my dad, so I should never forget that. Clearly, she was too good for his BS, though, because they split when I was 4, and he was hitched to Marissa like 2 months later. That's when the bundle of joy Ashley popped out like 9 months after. Then my mom died in a car accident. I'll never get over how she didn't make it to pick me up that one day. She was always on time, but this one time, she was just 10 minutes late. Felt like an hour to me back then. Got smashed by a drunk driver at an intersection. Dude live, she didn't. A few years down the line they finally locked his ass up for the DUI, but I was already an orphan by then. I remember sitting at school waiting for her, having no clue what happened. It took them 2 hours to finally come get me, lying through their teeth about the situation too. That's when good old Phil rolled up, annoyed look on his face as he stared at Marissa's corpse in the driver's seat, and asked her what am I supposed to do with this one. She just goes, "It's your son, so it's your problem not mine." Now here I am, finally got my life on track with a solid career, and some side hustles going too. Worked my ass off since 15 to get to this point. Put myself through college with barely going during the school years besides holiday breaks. So I've been on my own since 8 years old, no parental coddling or handouts for me. That's why it felt so huge when I scraped together enough to get my own crib recently. A cute little place, way better than those shitty student dorms I was crashing at with buddies before. Thought it would be a nice olive branch to have the family over for a little housewarming, ungrateful as they may be, but of course Phil's reaction was just sad and salty AF if I'm being honest. Dude looked low-key jealous as he got this annoyed look, grilling me about the furniture, architect, interior designer and all that. I gave him the Cliff's Notes version since I didn't think he'd actually care about the deets, but he just got all pissy and snarky, throwing out little digs like, "How would I know, and you couldn't be bothered to tell me anything, and you just want to show off how much money you make." So a week goes by and I get a call from Phil while I'm at work, trying to manage a major project. Says he needs to meet up, that it's urgent, so I agree. I head home after and walk into Marissa looking pissed as hell while Ashley is red-eyed and puffy, glaring at me from the living room. Phil's in the kitchen, cracking open some beers, offers me one which I politely decline. I'm nervous at this point, so I just flat out ask him what he wants. He looks up with this annoyed expression and answers my question with another question, ask me if I finally started caring about this family. I gave him a confused frown because I had no clue where he was going with this. He motions for me to join Ashley and Marissa in the living room, so I nod and take a seat across from them on the couch. Ashley's got her arms folded while Marissa rolls her eyes at me. Phil comes in and sits facing me, puts his beer bottle on the coffee table and leans back. Then he straight up asks if I'm blind or something. There's an awkward pause as I'm just looking bewildered and they seem pissed. Before I can respond, he adds that I'm either blind or choosing not to see things that need to be seen. Says I must have gotten too big for my britches since getting this house, and have decided not to look out for the people who actually matter to me. I sigh, and ask him what the hell he's talking about for him to be more specific. He lets out this sarcastic puff of air, then tells me I'm clearly not concerned about the serious situation going on in this room right now, that I've chosen to turn a blind eye to our family being in crisis here. I was like, what crisis are you even referring to? At this point, Ashley rolls her eyes and blurts out that she's pregnant. Like any normal person, I wanted to congratulate her, but before I could, she just breaks down crying. Marissa pulls her in for a hug and informs me that I should know what's going on in my own home, that I should care enough to ask. Phil says Ashley just found out she's knocked up and the guy responsible split on her because of it. Marissa adds that Ashley has decided to keep the baby, and that's what we need to proceed working off of here. The only thing I could think to say was asking if she could even afford that. I got death stares from both Ashley and Marissa at that point, but honestly, I was just trying to be pragmatic. In my head, I'd already assumed maybe they wanted me to chip in money to help her out, which I was fully prepared to do. But then Phil gets up, comes over and sits next to me on the couch. He says that's exactly why he called me over, that he's a good father to his daughter and maybe my own mom didn't teach me what it means to be a brother, but that brothers put their life on the line for their sister's well-being. I was like, whoa, my financial help I understand, but I'm not dying for her here. I asked what he wanted me to do. He smiles, pats me on the back and says, "That's my good boy." I gave a forced smile back, but it dropped pretty quickly when Phil followed it up with, "You're going to give your house to Ashley." No way, absolutely not. That's what I told him right then and there. Phil gets this confused frown and asks why not. I explain I can help out with money, but the house is mine. I offered to let her stay in one of the rooms rent-free until she can afford her own place, but Phil shoots that down, insisting not only do I straight up give her the house, but that I move out and buy a whole new property for myself too. I protested that Ashley won't be able to keep up with the bills and maintenance with a kid and no job, but Phil says that'll be my responsibility too. Sorry man, but hell no. I was pissed at this point, but trying to keep my cool. I told Phil there was no way that was happening, and that I was leaving. As I went to walk out, he wasn't letting it go. A week later, he shows up at my place while I'm at work. Don't know how he got inside, where he got a key from, but when I get home, there are these guys carrying boxes of my stuff out of the house. I rushed in asking them what the hell they're doing, and they said the homeowner told them to clear everything out. I'm like, I'm the damn homeowner, get your shit and leave right now. I was losing my cool at this point, but it was the last thing I expected coming home to. I go inside, and there's Phil and Ashley just standing there, doubling down on this ridiculous demand for me to do what a good brother would. Told them to get out, but they wouldn't listen. So I threatened to call the cops on their asses if they didn't leave immediately. They finally took off, but not without hurling some insults and F-bombs my way first. Look, I know that was a lot to read through, but it was way more messed up actually being there and seeing it go down. A week has passed since then, and I'm still processing how disturbing that whole situation was. That's part of why I'm venting here. Was I in the wrong? Part of me feels like I do owe it to them since they're family, but another part thinks there's a limit to what I can reasonably do for them. It pisses me off how checked out and unsupportive they were when I was growing up, but now they expect me to just put my whole life on hold for their sakes. Seems a bit much if you ask me. Let me know what you all think. You're all I've got to turn to on this one right now. The reason for that is Ashley actually reached out and asked to meet up with me, which I agreed to. She requested to do it at my place since she said she wanted to fill me in on some things, but I was still feeling raw from the shit that went down last time, so I insisted we meet somewhere else instead. We ended up at a cafe, and she was acting really awkward and uncharacteristically shy at first. Normally, she's just an arrogant, abrasive person. We sat in the corner and she told me she'd recently broken up with her boyfriend. I responded that I kinda had that idea already since Dad had made it sound like the guy who got her pregnant was the one who split on her, but she shook her head and said that's just what Dad thinks happened. I asked her to explain what really went down then. Turns out, Dad's version, where her BF couldn't handle the commitment and dumped her after the pregnancy news, that was the opposite of what actually happened according to Ashley. She admitted she was the one with the issues here, not him. Shocking, I know. She said she did genuinely care about this guy, but he found out about some stuff concerning her in the days leading up to when she told him the pregnancy news during their doctor's appointment. When they were headed there, he wanted to confront her about those things first, but she just blurted out the baby bombshell before he could, which pissed him off even more. Said he kinda lost it in that moment, even punched a hole in the wall, scared the shit out of her. And he told her he was done, and just walked out before she could respond. She's been blowing his phone up nonstop since then, but he's not answering. The only thing he sent was one text saying she needs to get rid of it if she ever wants him to speak to her again, but she's refusing to do that. Now I know Ashley's no saint, but this guy already doesn't seem like a great dude to me based on that alone. I just asked her what this stuff was that he found out about her, and she was like, it would be weird to get into the details with my own brother. So I took that to mean the escorting adult videos and just shrugged, said no need to elaborate if she wasn't comfortable with it. Before I could ask who she actually wanted to meet up with earlier though, she took a deep breath and let it out, then proceeded to tell me she had gotten tangled up in some really dark shit. I tensed up because I didn't really want confirmation of all my suspicions, but I heard her out. Ashley said she had wanted to be an artist, to paint and draw, but Marissa told her that wouldn't provide any kind of good life or money. She was instructed by her mom to find a suitable husband as soon as possible instead. Before long, Ashley started attracting the attention of much older men, which initially made her uncomfortable, but over time she got desensitized to it and she told Marissa about this, and Marissa said it was a good thing, that those older wealthy men knew what to do with the money they had, that they were the ones bringing in real income. Ashley was only 19 at the time, and her mom convinced her college wouldn't afford her a truly comfortable lifestyle, but her youthful looks were an asset many would pay for, so Ashley decided to try her hand at modeling. She reached out to countless agencies, did her research, but nobody seemed interested in representing her. That's when she met this guy, probably in his early 40s, who said he could get her modeling work. He started taking her to parties, buying her expensive outfits and jewelry for these gigs, and at first she was over the moon about it, until they finally filled her in on what her first booking would actually entail. Turned out she'd be basically selling her time to a man in exchange for getting hired as a model. Ashley thought it would just be going on a date, maybe having dinner, but it was an overnight thing. She had to spend the night. She did end up getting one tiny legitimate modeling gig where she did a photo shoot for some small brand, but that's about it. A few more men used her services as an escort under the guise of promised future bookings, but she was always told she didn't get those other jobs after the fact. What Ashley later realized was that the guy who had initially invested in her career was actually just pimping her out and pocketing the money for himself. She felt too scared to defy him for fear of what he might do, so she told him she didn't want to pursue modeling anymore and would take even minimum wage work instead. Luckily, he let her walk without much issue. Ashley tried waiting tables at bars for a bit, said it was brutal work for terrible pay after experiencing her previous easy money situation, but she also admitted Marissa would constantly belittle her for stooping so low and insist women were meant to be beautiful objects, well kept and treated like trophies, not wage slaves. So that's when Ashley started doing elite dating, going on paid dates with lonely wealthy men who just wanted some arm candy and conversation. Even that turned ugly though. With lots of those guys getting pushy and feeling entitled to more than they paid for once, she got them hooked with a fake emotional connection. Ashley said it was just less messy to sleep with them than deal with all the clingy stalker types. That's how she ended up fully transitioning to straight-up escorting for a while. It was going okay until a friend clued her in on the underground porn scene and making content. She gave it a shot but wasn't great at editing, promoting her videos and content online, felt too awkward on camera and insecure about her body, didn't have enough of a social media following to make real money that way. So that venture fizzled out too. Then she met her latest ex, who Ashley said used to be a co-worker of hers from her bartending days. They kicked it off as friends at first, but he started catching feelings. She was into him at the start because he seemed like he could be her way out of that world. But he also got kinda possessive and had trust issues, understandably so given what she was still low-key doing behind his back at times without his knowledge, which is kinda funny since they all know she works as an escort. But she's not outright telling them her clients are the ones bankrolling her lifestyle, and likely helping out with the kids' situation too. She said she decided to come clean to me about all this because she couldn't be fully honest with Phil. He still thinks Ashley just does some low-paying modeling work, and that there was one guy who got her pregnant, then dipped out on her. Marissa is more clued into the full story though, and has been pushing Ashley to marry the guy who proposed so he thinks the baby is his. But Ashley doesn't know what to do about that since she doesn't want to marry him, says he's weird and old and she doesn't want to perpetuate that lie. I asked her what she wanted me to help with exactly. She said financial assistance would be appreciated and that she wants me to make amends with Phil. Told me I should agree to his proposal of giving her my house, then just move out temporarily until things cool down before moving back in later. I respectfully declined that plan, let her know I'd be willing to help out with money, but couldn't relinquish my own home like that. Ashley got pissed, said I was being selfish after she devoted her whole life to me, that I didn't have a shred of decency to help her out now, claimed Phil was right about me, that I deserved to have been left at an orphanage instead of taken in when I needed housing. She stormed off after that. I didn't think my reaction was too harsh, but was it really that selfish of me? What do you all think of her version of events? Does it justify her asks and demands at all? Should I be trusting her account as the full truth here? In my opinion, it seems like she is being upfront, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to do everything she wants, right? Let me know your thoughts. This whole thing has really been weighing on me lately. Another week has gone by and something else happened that I figured I should tee you all in on. Thanks for the supportive responses on my previous update, by the way. Such a relief to have people validating my perspective for once. Anyway, after my meetup with Ashley, Phil reached out wanting to meet up with me at a bar to clear the air about some things. Interesting timing, so I agreed and headed over. We sat down at the counter and he mentioned knowing how much I'd be making at my new gig. I asked why that mattered, and he said he knew I'd be able to afford buying another house within a few years. I just shrugged and reminded him I already had a house, that this discussion needed to be put to bed for good. But Phil was insistent, saying I don't have a family yet and that it's harder for a woman to raise a kid alone, claimed this baby needed a safe space to call home. I pointed out to him that Ashley had been living with him and Marissa for quite a while already with no issues, so a little baby shouldn't really change that dynamic much. I also asked what she'd even do living alone in a whole house by herself while pregnant. Didn't she need to be around people who could care for her during that time? That's when Phil hit me with another bombshell. He and Marissa would be moving into my house with Ashley. I couldn't believe my ears at first, before the bartender let out the sarcastic chuckle, like he knew something juicy. Phil got offended, asking what was so funny. The guy replied that it's because Ashley just uses everyone, then tosses them aside once she's got what she wants. Phil demanded to know who the hell the bartender thought he was talking about my stepsister like that. Dude just nodded and said, "Yeah, she's the one who used to be my girlfriend." My eyes went wide, so this was the guy Ashley had got knocked up by. Phil clenched his fists and sternly asked the guy how he thought it was okay to just leave his family hanging like that. But the bartender put his hands up, saying he had no responsibility to any family situation and zero interest in raising a kid that wasn't even his. Phil was stunned into silence as the bartender explained that, yeah, Ashley had still ended up pregnant, but only after he caught her riding around with different guys late at night after lying about where she was going. That's when he realized she'd been stepping out on him with some side dude. The bartender, let's call him Bobby, said he didn't want to believe it at first when Ashley finally dropped the pregnancy bombshell on him. But it was the final straw. He couldn't risk having a kid when there was clearly no way it could be his after all her cheating. He told Ashley she had been playing him for a fool this whole time, and she didn't even deny it. I could only watch in shock as Phil's face cycled through anger, disbelief, and ultimately disappointment as Bobby's voice trailed off. The guy just shrugged, said he didn't owe Ashley a damn thing. If anything, she owed him his money, time, loyalty, and at the very least, his love back. Stated he didn't know if Phil was aware, but he was sure no father would be proud of a daughter like that. Phil clenched his jaw, got up from the bar stool without a word, and stormed out. Later that night, he texted me saying he had to pick Marissa up from her yoga class. Don't know what went down after that, but I'm sure it was something. Because the next day, I found Ashley sobbing on my doorstep, saying I had ruined everything. I pulled her inside to avoid a scene, then calmed her down by explaining I hadn't told Phil anything. It was her ex who happened to be the bartender where we met up. She said Phil had told her to pack her shit and just stay home, called her a disgusting embarrassment who he never thought would stoop so low, ordered her to get her act together and find a decent man, while also noting her chances of landing a good guy were extremely slim now that she was, you know. I just listened and hugged her as she vented about how ashamed she felt of herself. Ashley mentioned that Marissa had been eerily quiet the whole time Phil went off about faithful women and doing the right thing, like she couldn't get a word in edgewise, said it was one of those things she couldn't really elaborate on. When I asked what she meant, Ashley explained Marissa doesn't really have a mind of her own because, well, she has no mind to speak of. That yoga comment she made earlier had me furrowing my brow in confusion before Ashley broke down crying again, recounting more of what had happened. So, what do you all think went down there exactly? Is Ashley still Phil's precious daughter in his eyes after all this? Nobody has reached out to me since, so I'll be sure to meet up and fill you all in. Although I know you probably didn't expect me back so soon, but I couldn't help updating with this wild development only 2 days after my last post. For those asking, the ex's name doesn't really matter, but we can call him Bobby for simplicity's sake. Here's the new piece. So the day before yesterday, I went to meet up with Phil, told him I had made up my mind on a few things, that I did want to help raise Ashley's kid and was willing to let her stay in one of my guest rooms. Said I'd be okay covering diapers, formula, etc., but she'd need to find a job once able to after giving birth. Phil responded that there would be no one to watch the baby then, so I suggested she try picking up some remote freelancer work-from-home roles. This time he wasn't being as harsh and dismissive as usual. Phil paused for a moment, then sighed and took a seat on the couch. He told me he thinks I hate him. I was a bit taken aback, but asked why he would think that. Phil said it's because even my own mother hates him too. I quickly corrected him, said she had never once told me that, only that he loved me and looked out for me in his own way. Told him the only reason I was disappointed was because of how misguided my perception of him had been growing up based on the stunted picture she painted, but that the kind of outright disrespect and lack of caring I'd felt from him, as an adult, was the real issue. Phil rubbed his eyes and admitted he hated himself for a lot of things too, said he loved my mom, but they hadn't known each other long enough to determine if they would really stay together when Phil, despite the tragic loss of his wife in a car accident, continued to be open and honest with his loved ones, together with friends and family.